What's the best way you've seen someone rebel against school rules? We had a French teacher who was really bad and most people barely tolerated. It happened a few times that whoever arrived first would stand outside her door, as if waiting for her to show up and unlock it, and the rest of the class would just queue up behind them pretending to believe them. Meanwhile the teacher would just be sitting inside wondering where her class was. Senior year, my school banned jackets. A friend was cold, wore his jacket to lunch, and the VP told him to take it off. Friend pulls out the student handbook and asked where it said he couldn't wear it. VP flips for a while and ends up showing him the, or anything the administration seems disruptive, clause. Friend rolls his eyes, but takes off his coat. The next day, friend comes in with the same tweed sport coat the VP wore every day. Elementary school had a ban on extreme hair colors. My brother shows up with fire truck red hair. Principal stops us both as we're entering the school and she's going off on my brother. She's berating him, saying who do you know that has red hair like that? Without skipping a beat, Ronald McDonald. Principal just grabbed him, dragged him into the office. My 4th grade brain was in shock that he just won up to grown up like that. She called my dad, and he promptly didn't give a fuck and months later bro went from red to green to purple. This was prior to smartphones circa 2002. One of my classmates was a regular class clown. He would buy brownies in the cafeteria and roll them up in his hand, so they looked like a convincing piece of poo. He would then do all sorts of antics with this poo. Put it on seats, throw it at people, what have you. Obviously the school staff caught on, and he got in trouble. This guy didn't go quietly though. He was required to sit alone at lunch for the entire school year. There were months left before summer. The one teacher who made sure his punishment was severe made regular rounds of the lunchroom to maintain order. She would pass his lone seat during her rounds. One day he made another very convincing pastry sauced poo and had it ready for her when she passed. The entire lunchroom was watching out of the corner of their eyes while maintaining an alibi conversation with the people close to them. When she passed he stood up and snuck behind her and slipped the pastry poo in her purse that she was carrying on her shoulder and he quickly ran back to his seat. The lunchroom burst into laughter and the teacher had no idea why. Until later of course. The dude was an artist at rebellion. When I was in high school, there was a rule implemented that if you showed up late to school, you had to go to the front office to get a detention slip. You would then have to give it to the teacher for that period, who would then mark it down, and you were required to go to lunch detention for that day. I figured out by the 3rd slip that literally no one cared, teachers, security, or students. So when I was subsequently late for the rest of the year, I would take out an old slip that I had from a previous detention, walk through school, give it to my teacher to mark down, then take it back to give to the lunch detention supervisor. But I never went to detention because the front office didn't have record of me being late. I was late no less than 50 times my senior year, only having been reprimanded the initial 3 times. I even told my parents about it after I had graduated, and even they agreed it was dumb and funny. My school had a similarly easy to abuse tardy system. 3 tardies less than 10 minutes late equaled an unexcused absence, and you were allowed 13 of those. 4 every class. So, that meant you could miss the first 10 minutes of every class 38 times with no consequences except teacher annoyance. It also resetted the semester break. No idea why the policy was so lenient, except that it was a very upper middle class school full of high achievers who vastly outnumbered slackers like myself. In 3rd grade, early 90s, my brother did not want to participate in some sort of multiple class activity. He just hung around the edges until a teacher approached him and told him, now dear, you can't be here without participating. Brother took what she said to heart and waited for a chance to slip away. He made it about 3 miles before a family friend noticed him and drove him the rest of the way home. I remember mom being upset at him, but even more angry at the school for taking 4 hours to notice he was gone when they took a head count after lunch. Teacher said boys need their shirts tucked in. Never said how much needs to be tucked in. So when one of my friends got told to tuck in his shirt, he stood still, used one finger, and tucked in a tiny portion of the back of his shirt into his pants, then walked off. was later called to the office because they thought he was acting out and not obeying rules, but the kid's parents said that he followed the rule. It never said the whole shirt needs to be tucked in. So the principal, secretary, and teacher all have to let the kid off. The next day, the principal makes an announcement to the whole school that boys need to have their entire shirt tucked in the entire way. We laughed about it. I was in a Christian high school at the time. The day before winter break rolls around, and I had packed a few Toblerone chocolate bars and some notes for the teachers I most appreciated, with the intention of leaving them as a Christmas gift. Before school, the principal made a public announcement that students were not to give any teachers any gifts unless we were going to give all teachers the same gift. This was obviously a bit of a problem, since I couldn't exactly come back the next day with additional candy bars, so I marched into her office to address this issue. Upon entering the office, I made a show of opening a chocolate bar and breaking off exactly one piece and placing it on her desk. I told her that I was going to give her a full candy bar, but I now had to share her chocolate bar with other teachers that I didn't really care so much about anyways. That rule was quietly lifted. During my senior year of high school, 2008, my school got super strict about cell phones. It got to the point that we weren't allowed to have them out during any point in the day, not even during our lunch period. They claimed that we would send each other test answers or something like that. Anyway, a friend of mine who was a year below me was tired of the rule and how rude teachers were when enforcing it. He literally looked at his phone to check the time and got it taken from him for the rest of the day. That next week he comes to lunch with two older/non-functioning flip phones. He takes the first out and pretends that he's talking to someone on it. A teacher was instantly on him. They walk over and hold their hand out for him to give it up. He looks at the teacher and then proceeds to break the flip phone in half and puts it in their hand. The teacher was speechless. She just walked away without saying anything. He takes the second phone out and does the same thing again. The second teacher thought it was pretty funny. Flash forward to 2015, and I start working at the school as a student mentor. And now everyone is allowed to have their phones out pretty much at any time. How things change. When I was in grade 7, our last class of the day, students would always bring in snacks. Our lunch shift was way too early in the day, so by the end of the school day we'd all be feeling hungry. And we were all told by our teacher that if we didn't have enough to share we couldn't eat in the classroom. One day, almost all of us brought in enough food to share, even with the students that didn't bring anything in. We even synchronized the times that we pulled all our food out. Our teacher was clueless. She had no idea what to tell us. There wasn't any school-wide no food in classrooms rule, so she couldn't run to the principal. Finally she gave in to our malicious compliance and allowed us to share food for the rest of the period. I transferred to a high school in the deep south my junior year from an American school for servicemen's families in Germany. They had just introduced a dress code, and so everyone was rebelling against it. One of my male friends wore a dress which adhered to the dress code. He got suspended for creating a disturbance. I rollerbladed to school, and I realized that rollerblades met with the dress code. Shoes will be worn at all times and cover the heel and toes. So I wore them to school. My homeroom teacher thought it was hilarious. The principal did not. He pulled me into his office and told I had to change because of insurance/liability. I explained that I'd been skating since I was 2. I had more experience on skates than some of the freshmen had walking. He agreed, but sort of pleaded. I told him I saw his point, but the dress code stated that shoes had to be worn at all times and I'd forgotten them in homeroom. So he grabbed a random freshman out of the hall to fetch them for me. Had vending machines outside the buildings, but due to some shat vandalizing them, this understandably pissed the school board off. The machines were put off limits, but could not be powered down due to some kind of contractual obligation of constant availability. In an effort to combat that, faculty were posted at the machines during class, changes to prevent purchases. But, thankfully, no one was posted at the machines during class time. Mind you, this is 97, 99 era. We weren't happy as that was our sole source of caffeine on campus. We decided to heck with that and made purchases during class. Me, being the lithe tiny guy I was conscripted to be the buyer. while the teacher was either out of the room or indisposed, or let's be honest, intentionally distracted, I would collect cash and requests, 4 at a time, and hop out the emergency escape window that they had opted to not have an alarm on, and walk 20 to the soda machine and make my purchase. This went on for some time until the drink companies lambasted the school board for not restocking their dwindling supplies, allegedly as per contract. They put 2 and 2 together and realized that purchases were still being made. Apparently I was not the only gopher and lifted the ban on my last year.